Hello, everyone. We are about 5 minutes to 6:30. So this is just a 5-minute warning that we are going to get started promptly on time. So go ahead and get comfortable, get your coffee or a glass of wine or whatever you would like to have during this webinar, and we will be back very shortly to get started. Okay, so it is now 6:30, and we would like to be respectful of everyone's time. So we will go ahead and start tonight's legislative panel discussion. I want to thank all of our panelists and our moderator for being here with us tonight. I am Jennifer Krishka, CEO of the Jewish Women's Foundation of the Greater Palm Beaches. We are dedicated to advancing the status of women and girls in Florida and in Israel through strategic grant making, advocacy and education, and leadership development programs to create long-lasting social change. You can learn more about our work at jwfpalmbeach.org. And we are so excited to be partnering with the Women's Foundation of Florida. And I'm going to turn it over to Takeda King-Pang, who is the Chief Program Officer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our legislative panel discussion tonight. I am Takeda. I am the Chief Program Officer of the Women's Foundation of Florida. Our organization is dedicated to empowering and educating women and girls so that they can become leaders, and together we're going to change the world. And so tonight is a great opportunity for us to hear from some really amazing state legislators who've been doing the hard work up in Tallahassee and back home in the district. I know they've stayed very busy this summer as well. So I want to thank each of our panelists for joining us. I have the honor of introducing our moderator for this evening, the Vice Mayor of Westlake, Miss Katrina Long Robinson. And we're so appreciative that she has agreed to help us with this event tonight. So thank you so much, Katrina.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So thank you each for the opportunity to serve. I'd like to give a special thank you to the Jewish Women's Foundation, as well as the Women's Foundation of Florida, for allowing me to speak with this dynamic group of women. I like to always say, and I tweet and hashtag all the time, we lead, we serve. And so it is such an honor for me to be able to sit with you this evening for a much needed conversation as it relates to our legislative session and discussion. And so for those of you who are viewing via our webinar, as well as Facebook, please feel free to type your questions in the question and answer chat. We will have people looking at your questions, so we'll be able to kind of get some of those answered while we're on this evening. And so, because I don't want to waste any time and I'm ready to get to the questions, just as I'm sure our participants are, we're going to start with, ladies, you introducing yourself. You're going to kind of tell us who you are, what district you represent, and give us just a quick fun fact about you before we get into these heavy questions. Senator Berman, we are going to start with you.
Thank you so much, Katrina, or Vice Mayor.
It's fine. It's fine.
My name is Lori Berman. I am the senator for District 31, which is central Palm Beach County. It goes from the Delray line on the southern border, mostly up to Lake Worth on the northern border. My eastern border is the ocean, and most of my western border is the turnpike. I have served in that position for 2 years. And before that, for 8 years, I was a state representative representing a lot of the same areas. So I am starting, hopefully I will be on the ballot in November, but hopefully I will be starting my 11th year after November. So I have a lot of experience in the legislature. I am a founding trustee of the Jewish Women's Foundation of South Palm Beach County. So I know the organization very well, and I know the good work that you're doing, and I know especially the North Palm Beach County group has been around longer, has done a lot more, and so I congratulate all of you on your work. And I work a lot with the Women's Foundation. As a matter of fact, I was on a call today with our Vice Mayor and with Takeda. So we're always working on those areas, and my heart is in working for women and making sure that women and children our voices are heard in Tallahassee. Very often we are, shunned aside, and there's a story from Washington, D.C. about a bunch of legislators meeting in a room to talk about what they're going to do about cancer. And they start talking about what different types of cancers there are. And they talk about prostate cancer and lung cancer and colon cancer, and not one of them mentions breast cancer or ovarian cancer. So it's really important that we women are at the table, because as you've heard, if we're not at the table, often you're on the menu. That's right. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you. A fun fact is that we moved to South Florida when I was 6 weeks old. So I pretty much consider myself a native Floridian. So
absolutely.
I'm really happy to be with all of you this evening.
Thank you, Senator Berman. Representative Schlossberg, we're going to come over to you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Takeda. I'm Emily Schlossberg, and I represent House District 91, and that runs from Boca Raton, Delray, and Boynton Beach between Military Trail and the Turnpike. And I would say a lot of my district is covered by Senator Lori Berman's district, so we represent a lot of the same population, and we kind of had, our districts overlap. My house district is the second oldest demographic in the state of Florida. So it's a very heavy older population. And it's also a very heavy district with we have a lot of members of the Jewish community living in the Boca Raton and Delray area, including in the Delray area, a lot of the Holocaust survivors and their family. We have a big demographic of that. I was elected in 2016, my first run for office.
Wow.
The thing that got me into politics was traffic safety, a tragedy and traffic safety. And so while I'm here, I've been not only doing traffic safety, but I'm the co-chair of the Women's Legislative Caucus in Tallahassee. I'm also the incoming chair of the Jewish Legislative Caucus coming in. So I've picked up many other issues being in the legislature. I really enjoy serving with Senator Lori Berman. We've sponsored a lot of bills together. We've done safety bills. We've done all different types of bills. And also Rep. Escamani. We're all in the Women's Legislative Caucus, and we have our meetings up there where we get to talk about issues that affect the women and kind of talk about endorsing certain bills or all supporting certain pieces of legislation that really have a good impact on women. It's been a pleasure serving. I also try to stay as much involved with the Women's Foundation as possible. I didn't attend the meeting today, but I'm going to Takeda. I'll be at the next meeting, the candidate meeting or the Circle of Women meeting. I'll be there. I appreciate everything that you guys do. Truly tremendous work in the community. And a fun fact about me, I guess I'd have to say my dog is Dorito, and she's Cool Ranch Doritos.
Wow.
It's not really me, it's my dog, but
Yeah, that's a
had to
fun,
bring her in here.
a funny fun fact as well. Thank you so much, Representative Schlossberg, for all you do. Representative Escamani, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor, and I'm so grateful to our organizers and really humbled by the invitation because I am surrounded by two incredible queens over in South Florida. And I just want to say a special thank you to Senator Lori Berman. I first met Senator Berman when she was a House member and I worked at Planned Parenthood, and it's really humbling to serve in the House alongside our Senate colleagues. And of course, Rep. Schlossberg, one of the first folks who endorsed me back in 2017 and has been a really great partner on the House floor and just really loves serving alongside you. For those who don't know, my name is Anna Escamani and I'm Zooming to you from Orlando. So I am proud to serve District 47 in the Florida legislature. And so if you're familiar with the downtown Orlando area, that's pretty much my district. And then we also go north to Winter Park and then south to Belle Isle and Edgewood. We flipped this legislative seat back in 2018. And I mentioned earlier that I worked at Planned Parenthood. And I think that that's very much a reason, one of my foundational purposes is to ensure that every woman and girl and every person who needs reproductive health can get it. And to ensure that if you want to start a family, if you're not ready to start a family, if you choose adoption, that you have all options in front of you in a safe and judgment-free way. In particular, also realizing how, for so many of our folks who want to become parents, they face obstacles, whether it's financial, whether it's lack of healthcare access. There are so many injustices in our society that also make it very difficult to become a parent and to ensure that your child is going to be safe growing up. And so to that point, I'm really proud to champion reproductive health alongside economic issues and tax policy and environmental issues and public education. You name it, we care about it. And one interesting fact about me that I'll toss into the universe, or I guess fun fact, my first crush was Han Solo from episode 4 of Star Wars, A New Hope. And so I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I don't get to talk about it as often as I want to, but definitely just a huge nerd, like all the way around. And Han Solo will always have my heart.
Wow, nice, nice. Well, thank you, ladies, for being so transparent. I wanted to ask that because sometimes, as elected officials and people who we live a public life, sometimes people forget we love to have fun and we're relatable. So thank you for being so transparent. Because Representative Escamani, you mentioned your work with Planned Parenthood. We're going to go ahead and get into our questions. Representative Escamani and Senator Berman, this question will be for the two of you. Representative, I'd like for you to answer first. The first question is, the parental consent bill was a hot issue during session and became law this summer. Speak to us as to why this bill is problematic and why it's problematic for teens more so.
Absolutely. I would be honored. So I mentioned my work at Planned Parenthood. I worked at Planned Parenthood for about 7 years. And actually my Planned Parenthood story started as a patient. My mom passed away when I was 13 years old. And so for those of us that have lost folks that are close to us, I mean, it's very difficult no matter the circumstances. In my case, I didn't have anyone to talk to about menstruation, about birth control, about healthy relationships, and found myself with an abstinence-only education in my public school that led me searching for answers. And I made an appointment at a local Planned Parenthood. I was 18 years old and walked in and was treated with so much love and respect. I left with a method of contraception that was right for me. And that has been so important to my ability to finish college, get a master's, run for office. I mean, bodily autonomy is essential to all of our lives. And so one of my biggest fears when I was a kid, though, when I was a young person, was being in a situation where I wouldn't have control, because the fact that my mom had passed away and my dad was working abroad. If I became pregnant at 16, 17, I don't know what I would have done, to the point where, I looked for information, but again, was limited to abstinence-only education and was lucky to find Planned Parenthood at that moment in my life. The parental consent legislation, first of all, what folks should know is that it really is an effort to try to relitigate abortion here in the state of Florida, because we do have a strong right to privacy in our state constitution that has been the target of anti-abortion extremists for decades. And there have been many court decisions in the Florida Supreme Court that have attempted to challenge this right to privacy, and it has been upheld. Now, of course, we have a completely new Supreme Court. We have an overwhelming majority of conservatives. And so anti-abortion extremists love to get something in front of this court and to challenge it and to try to basically overturn past precedent that we've established here in Florida, where some other bills, for example, 24-hour mandatory delay, has been stalled because of this right to privacy and this interpretation. So first thing folks should know is that this issue really is a Trojan horse designed to ban abortion in the state of Florida. But at the heart of the actual policy, it is still dangerous just on its own. Florida is already a parental notification state, which means if you are under the age of 18 wishing to end your pregnancy, you have to get proof of notification of a parent or guardian before you can actually move forward with the procedure. I became a notary when I was at Planned Parenthood so that I could provide assistance on days where we provide abortion care and a young person was coming with their parent to basically notarize the proof that this is your guardian and that they have been notified. So it's a very serious process, and it's cumbersome because not every person has a relationship with their parent or guardian. Some young people might be in an abusive situation with a parent or guardian. So this is not even an option of notification. What the legislature did is that they took it from notification and they added consent, which now means not only do you have to ask, not only do you have to communicate that you are making this decision, now you're asking for permission, and that parent or guardian can veto your decision, pushing you into the courts to get a judicial bypass. And the last thing I'll say before tossing it to my senator is that this process is very difficult to get a judicial bypass. It's basically a young person navigating a courthouse, and every county has a different procedure. She is entitled to a pro bono attorney, but not every attorney is supportive. And we do have anti-abortion attorneys that are representing these young people in different circumstances. Overwhelmingly, more than 2/3 of a young person who experiences an unplanned pregnancy and wishes to end it does tell their parent or guardian. And that's important to remember. Overwhelmingly, young people already are having these conversations. For the third that aren't, it's because they can't. And like I already illustrated in my situation, I didn't have a parent I could even talk to. And so this change has already resulted in at least one situation in Hillsborough where a young person had appealed a judge's denial and she was denied again. And she's a Guatemalan individual. Her mother does not live here. And right now she's potentially being forced to have a pregnancy that she is not ready for. And the irony about all of this is that this young person is not mature enough to end their pregnancy, but the state deems her mature enough to become a parent. And that's not okay.
Senator, I'm going to let you kind of tap into that, but that leads into my next question that I would like for you as well as Representative Schlossberg to go into. So tell me briefly, why is this bill problematic for pregnant teens? And then we're going to go into that paid parental and medical leave issue. So answer that question, and then I'm going to throw a question to Representative Schlossberg. You're on mute.
Okay, great. Thank you for reminding me. Representative Escamani is our resident expert because of her background in Planned Parenthood, and she did an amazing job explaining to you so much of what the problems with that bill are. The bill was a solution in search where there was no problem. It's just something they're getting ready to take to the Supreme Court because we have a new Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in the 1980s ruled specifically that parental consent is illegal, is unconstitutional in the state of Florida because of our privacy clause. So they are just trying to overturn that decision, but it's really harmful for the young people. Like Representative Escamani said, the vast majority of them talk to their parents and already are having that discussion. It's the ones who can't, for whatever reason, who are really at risk. And the reasons vary, but they're really horrendous reasons. It could be a case of incest. It could be that one of your parent got you pregnant. It could be that the child knows that their parent will kick them out of the house when they find out that they're pregnant. So the reasons why they don't want to get parental consent are just really scary for the young minors who are pregnant. And it's just another attempt of the Florida legislature to chip away at abortion rights. And we fought it as best we could, but it's a very tough issue because people say, of course parents should consent. You know, they're like, if my child gets medical treatment, that I have to consent. Why shouldn't I have to consent on this issue? But it's really for that subset who cannot get consent that we're really putting them at risk and at harm through this legislation. And I'm really sorry that it passed. And I have my fears about how the court will handle this case when it comes before it.
Thank you, Senator, for your transparency. Representative Schlossberg, paid parental and medical leave has been a priority issue for the Jewish Women's Foundation as well as the Women's Foundation of Florida. The Florida Family Leave Act was introduced but didn't get very far. How do you think we can get the bill heard and passed?
Right, thank you. And let me tell you something, this is so incredibly important. So on the federal level, we have unpaid leave for those employees if they want to go for up to 12 weeks for birth, adoption, foster care, placement of a new child. But on a state level, what the bill attempted to do was to give paid leave for a period of 3 months for bonding, for family bonding, and it applies to men and women. And the bill actually did not get a hearing in the House. And so I think what happened was the bill didn't actually provide for a funding mechanism. So the state of California has actually a decent plan. It's set up similar to our unemployment insurance. They're similar to agencies such as we have the DEO that administers unemployment. They have something similar, an agency that takes out of each employee's, it deducts of like 1.2% from every employee, and it puts it into a fund and it takes money from that fund and starts paying out for this paid family leave. And I think in order for us, our state to be effective, I think we'd also have to do something similar. We'd have to find that funding mechanism, whatever, and I'm not sure exactly the numbers, what percentage would be deducted, but we'd need a state agency to actually implement the program, similar to our unemployment. And since ideally we're going back next session and revising our statutes on unemployment assistance, I think it would be the opportune time to start adding in our Family Leave Act, our Paid Family Leave Act. I think this would be the time that we should start looking at this and how we can administer it. And I think it plays in really nicely to what kind of work I see us having to go and do already. So that's really, I think that was a lot of the issue with the bill as filed. It didn't have that funding mechanism. It was more of an unfunded mandate saying employers have to pay for up to 3 months of leave without providing where the money was going to be generated from. So I think this is something that we'd have to really focus on next session. And I think we could come up with something. It's something probably similar to California, the way the state does.
Sure. Representative Escamani, did you have anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our country is one of few that isn't providing this type of support for parents, and it's important to realize too that in our changing economy, we have many situations where women are the breadwinners, or I think in the most common scenario, multiple parents are working, right? It can even be intergenerational with grandparents working in a household alongside parents. And so really important that we realize from an intersectional perspective how important ensuring that there is paid leave for families. I think it's such a disgrace that when you become a parent, you have to look at disability to provide you with some sort of coverage. Giving birth should not be a disability. Giving birth is an incredible part of living life, and so it's critical that this is a bipartisan issue, and actually it is a political issue that does get support from folks with all political backgrounds. And there's a reason why we've even seen some members of our White House talk about this. They haven't pursued major policy on it yet. It is an issue that does get support from both sides of the aisle, and it's worth the cost. It's so important that, especially with not just the health of the family unit, but the health of that child. We know that some of the most important parts of a child's life is 0 to 4, and having the ability to be supported during that time is essential.
Senator Berman, I see you unmuted yourself. Was there anything you wanted to say?
I did just want to recommend that I know that that's a priority for both of these groups, and I would ask that you continue to voice that when you come up to Tallahassee, that you let your legislators know, and when in Washington also, how important this issue is to you and how you want to make sure that we do have paid family leave. I think that it's not been an issue really front and center as much as it should be. And COVID has shown the reason partly why we do need more paid family leave, because now we have people who are at home trying to work and also trying to take care of their children and teach their children and be their teacher's children and be the cook and the cleaner and everything else in their house. So I would just say, please keep advocating for that and really make your voices heard loudly on that issue, because it's an important issue for all of us.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to ask this question to Representative Schlossberg, and then we'll go around to each of you. And we have a couple of more questions. Remember, those of you who are viewing, please make sure to put your questions in the chat, because these ladies are going to be able to answer your questions as well. Representative Schlossberg, given the current COVID-19 situation, there are a record number of Floridians struggling with unemployment, food insecurity, and even a lack of health care. What could the Florida legislator be doing to address these and other pressing issues in our state?
Right, and the number one, and part of the question, I think the number one, one of the major issues that are affecting women by these issues is childcare. I mean, because schools are open virtually, children have to be home. Sometimes it's very difficult for them to even afford, for women to afford this childcare. A single mother with many, with a few children, it's just very difficult. And I think, like, as the legislature, we're going to have to come and work at subsidies or some type of voucher system to help subsidize the cost of childcare, especially if, certain requirements will be met and a family will qualify, or a woman will qualify for certain subsidies in the child care room. That's really what I see some type of relief coming in that sense, because this is just tying the hands of many women, and we need to do something. We need to act on this.
Sure. Senator Berman, same question. We're given the COVID-19 situation, we're seeing issues with our unemployment rate, food, the lack of food, as well as healthcare. Can you talk to us, what could the legislator be doing to address these issues and other pressing issues in our state?
Certainly, and this is really a troubling area to me, and I'm sure to my colleagues also. All of us have asked for a special session to go back to Tallahassee to get some of these issues discussed, and we have been denied in our requests. We are all members of the minority party. We do not have enough members to require us to go back to Tallahassee right now. So I will tell you the things I would do if we were going back to Tallahassee. First thing I would do would be to raise the unemployment amount in our state. It is $275 a week. So that's about $1,300 a month. No family can live on that. Even if you had 2 income earners on that amount of money, that barely covers your rent in a place like Palm Beach County. The second thing I would do would be to extend the amount of time. Florida has one of the shortest amounts of time. We have 12 weeks is all that we give to individuals. The federal government is subsidizing that amount, but that is really a stingy amount, and it's horrible. And we're seeing that we're going to see the effects, because now the federal money, some of the federal money, the $600 extra has dried up. And so we're going to start to really see even more food insecurity here in our state. And then the other problem that we've been arguing about for years here in the state is health insurance, and that specifically Medicaid expansion. If we expanded Medicaid in our state, and we would have about 800,000 people who would be eligible to get health insurance. Right now, those people use our hospitals as their primary care doctors, and in the end, we end up paying. Plus, this is all billions of dollars from the federal government that we could be taking. And I will tell you, we are one of only 12 states that has not expanded Medicaid. Just now, another Republican state, I forget which one specifically, voted and agreed to expand Medicaid. We tried to put it on our ballot this time, but we weren't able to. But I am fully convinced that if it was on the ballot, the people of Florida would want to expand Medicaid. So those are all really big, important things that we should be doing in the legislature, but that they won't allow us to be doing. They won't call us back to Tallahassee. They don't want us to be raising our voices and saying how disastrous the unemployment system in the state has been. They don't want to hear about Medicaid expansion. They don't want to hear about the healthcare issues. And it's really disappointing for us as legislators. And all we can do right now is raise our voices, and that's what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative?
Yeah, I'd love to add more to that. I mean, colleagues did a great job in summarizing, just some of the apparent and immediate concerns, right? So the unemployment system in particular has been disastrous, and our office has been, like many others, responding in real time, almost serving as a mini DEO, because the Department of Economic Opportunity has completely failed both on software that works, but also just basic customer service and problem solving. And so our offices have really had to step up and kind of serve as executive branch support because of the governor's inability to take this pandemic seriously and to not deliver results on really key programs. In addition to the unemployment system needing to be improved, like Senator Berman painted, increasing that weekly benefit amount, increasing the amount of weeks, changing the software, making it easier to become eligible, providing support for self-employed folks. We know that many women are self-employed because they are balancing childcare alongside their own contract work or small business. And the reality too is if it wasn't for the CARES Act, We know that Florida would have no support for self-employed people because they are carved out of unemployment. And so I think that is something to revisit in the next session to make sure that we're not creating gaps in our systems. I also want to elevate some other programs of importance. You know, one is food stamps, and this is managed by DCF. And it has been so important that folks can put food on their table, and our food banks have really stepped up to be incredible resource always, but especially during this time. But we talk about the work search requirement being waived for unemployment. It also needs to continue to be waived for food stamps. And there was a moment this past month where the state of Florida silently put it back into place. And once we learned it, we made a lot of noise, and they pulled back and had the work search requirement waived again for food stamps. But you know, many of our families are in need of all of these resources, and to make one more bureaucrat than the other is dangerous to their health and well-being, and of course for children as well. We've also, I just want to say one more thing around the fact that women in particular have really carried a brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Rep. Schlossberg already mentioned how, you know, lack of childcare has been a big deal. Because many of our moms have been balancing either working from home or not having a job anymore because they need to take care of their children through distance learning and now virtual educational avenues to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I also want to elevate how majority of our essential workers are women, and primarily women of color. So we're talking about our Black and brown folks that are the ones as nurses, whether they're in our assisted living facilities or in our hospitals, they're working at our grocery stores or checking you out, you know, as you're buying your groceries. And so we don't have hazard pay at most of these type of businesses. And so we have Black and brown bodies, and especially women, putting themselves on the line every day to keep the economy operating. And at the same time, we also know in the tourism field, which is one of the ones most directly impacted, it's primarily people of color as well. And it's many women who work in service. And so there's a huge, there's a unemployment's impacting every person, don't get me wrong, but we do see disparities along Black and brown folks when it comes to how damaging unemployment has been. And then again, on the essential worker front, we do see that a lot of the responsibility is carried by Black and brown women.
That's right. Thank you for that. So transitioning to my next question, talking about the effects of COVID-19 for the first time, ladies. So for the first time in 13 years, the House and the Senate agreed to fully fund the state's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, known as the Sagowski Fund, right? So that was a big step. So we know that affordable housing is a major issue across Florida. While the 2020 session did not sweep the Sadowski funding set aside for affordable housing, how are those funds being used correctly? And what else can the legislator do to increase affordable housing? Senator Berman, I'd love to hear from you first about this, and then we will go to Representative Escamani and then Representative Schlossberg.
Thank you. So when the governor did just do his vetoes, he did take some of the money out of affordable housing, unfortunately. You know, I was excited for my first time in 10 years. We actually fully funded the Sadowski Fund. And then, of course, because of COVID, we ended up losing some of that money. The cities and counties are the ones who get to figure out how to use a lot of that money, and especially our counties, and they're really good. You know, they know what the local needs are. Do they need to put the money toward down payments? Do they need to put the money toward actually building housing units? And so I think that that's a good mechanism that we have in place, but we just need to fund it. And unfortunately, I think this year our budget is going to be even worse. You know, we've started to see some of the financial projections that are coming out because of the results of COVID. And I think we're something like $5 billion below what we were last year. Last year, we had an amazing budget. We did so many good things. We gave teacher salaries, we gave worker salaries, we fully funded Sadowski. And now all the good things that we did are going to be in jeopardy because of COVID and, you know, the bad situation, the governor's already asking all the state agencies to look into figuring out how they're going to cut things. I started in 2010, which was we were seriously suffering from the effects of the recession. And I can tell you it was horrible because agencies were being cut to the bone. And I anticipate that we're going to have that same issue again. And we're going to have some real problems with affordable housing just when we need it the most, just when things are really, really bad for a lot of people. And I just don't know, you know, money is important, and we're going to really see this legislative session that it's going to be a very big challenge.
Representative Schlossberg.
Yeah, I agree with everything Senator Berman. I mean, looking forward, we're going to be cutting and slashing the budget every which way that we can. And like the expectations for what's coming up, I mean, they're very low because we're just going to be cutting. And so, you know, it's unfortunate that as soon as we fully fund Sadowski, we run into the COVID crisis. And it, you know, that it was ideal and it would be great, but I don't expect to, you know, I know he already vetoed some of the money, and we're just going to keep, you know, I think next session, we're just going to be cutting.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll add to that too. So it was mentioned that the governor vetoed part of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars that the legislature finally secured. It was about $225 million that he vetoed. And the reason why that's really bad, by the way, is that it impacts the ability to build more affordable housing units. And I want to express the importance of just supply in this problem. You know, we don't have enough affordable housing. Like there just literally is not enough supply wise. And so when there's no supply to meet the demand, the cost goes up. And I know in Central Florida and throughout South Florida, you know, we have a very large renter community. And so these are folks that are, you know, paying their rent month by month, and they have been, everyone's been impacted by COVID-19, but our renters in particular, because they don't have a bank that can defer payments, they have a landlord. And many landlords have worked extremely hard to try to support tenants throughout this process when others haven't, especially our corporate management companies. They've been some of the most aggressive in filing evictions. And though we have a semi-moratorium right now, it does require a person to now go to court and to defend themselves to demonstrate they face an adverse impact of COVID-19. And if they can't do that, they're going to be evicted. We've been working with so many families right now, especially moms who live in hotels and motels right now. And I have to tell y'all, I'm not sure what it's like in South Florida, but it has been so difficult to support folks that are precariously housed right now because our shelters have been closed due to COVID-19, and shelters already face difficulty in not having enough space. And just as an example, there's a mom that we've been helping. She has 2 teenage boys. We've been helping her for about 2 months now. I've been basically paying for her weekly rent and trying to get her, you know, resources. And long story short, though the shelter had opened, her boys were too old to be included in this shelter. So we're facing tons of different barriers in just the crisis and responding to immediate folks. But it's systematic. I mean, we've had these problems for a very long time. The pandemic has just made it even worse a lot faster, but these are our everyday challenges. So ways to solve the crisis on affordable housing, you know, one is that we need to stop raiding the trust funds. And though we are going to face budget constraints, I would argue that affordable housing is one place we shouldn't cut. And though we cut affordable housing dollars, the governor also gave away $543 million to the state's largest corporations. That's $500 million. That's actually more than that goes into the housing trust fund. He just allowed to go back to corporations in a refund. And so we need to stop allowing corporations to determine policy and to get tax breaks that they don't need. And that money can be really protected where we need it, especially in a crisis. And then also add, I've been a firm advocate of just renters' rights and trying to even the playing field for renters a little bit in our state. Tiny houses, supporting inclusive zoning so that we have more dense communities with just more smaller housing options. Like, you know, some folks call it a duplex or, you know, granny floor, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think that's so important to just creating more smaller house options that folks of every age can find, because you know, we often think about affordable housing as impacting young people, but I know Rep. Schlossberg knows this. It's a big issue for seniors too. I mean, seniors who are on fixed income really struggle to find affordable housing. And even if you live in an affordable housing unit, your rent can still be increased based on HUD formulas. So
Sure.
we have a lot of work to do.
Sure. So we have some questions in the chat box, ladies. However, I want to ask this one question to give you an opportunity to talk about what work did you do this past session? What work were you able to implement, things you were able to get done during this past session? Representative Eskamani, we'll start with you, and then Senator Berman and Representative Schlossberg. Then we're going to get to our questions.
Sure. I'll be brief. I mean, there is so much that we could talk about. And, unfortunately, as a freshman Democrat, it's very challenging to actually get bills passed. And so I think a lot of times in the Florida House, we're 47 Democrats out of 120. So oftentimes we are the loyal opposition, if you will. Now, we were able to secure teacher raises, and a part of that effort was maintaining local control of how these additional dollars would be spent. And that was a success story for us because we actually filibustered the bill to make sure that would happen. And then one of my proudest policy accomplishments has been increasing arts and culture funding in the state of Florida. So in my first session, working alongside our colleagues, we were able to increase arts and culture funding by 800% in the state of Florida. And this funds so many of our nonprofit community members and their programming. So we increased it from $2 million to about $21 million. We were able to protect it this past session, but part of it was vetoed, unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 budget cuts. But that's been, one of the important issues for me in my 2 years of legislature. And then focused on women and girls to kind of, hone in on that. One of the bills that we have filed for 2 years now with the support of Senator Berman as our Senate sponsor is to keep guns out of the hands of domestic abusers. And that bill has not passed yet, but we keep filing it because we just know how important it is. We know that escaping abuse is already very difficult, and it becomes 5 times more deadly when there's a gun involved. And we also know that there are connections between misogyny and domestic violence to mass shootings. And so in an effort to reduce both domestic violence, intimate partner violence alongside mass shootings, we're to keep filing this bill to get movement on it. And then also just add, the fight on parental consent has been incredibly important to us, alongside trying to get more support into prenatal, postnatal care, because again, early education is so important, ensuring that during that 0 to 4 time range that a parent can be with their child. They can also have resources to raise their child and to be healthy in doing that is really important. I get very frustrated when my Republican colleagues keep attacking abortion without even talking about adoption or prenatal and postnatal care and completely ignoring those elements. And so we'll continue to push for all fronts throughout our work.
Wonderful. Senator Berman.
Thank you. Like Rep. Eskamani said, it's hard being in the minority party. But as I mentioned earlier, we had a really good budget, and we did get some great things in there with the teachers' raises, a 3% raise for all state employees, which actually did stay in the budget. It was not vetoed. I was so happy to see that. And then we brought a lot of money back to Palm Beach County through projects, and some of them unfortunately were vetoed, but we did try and do it. One of the issues that I'm very active in and concerned about has to do with mental health, and we brought some money back for the Palm Beach County JCRC, but it was vetoed to have a mental health first aid program, but it's something we're going to continue to work on and make sure that we have that. One of the areas where legislatively I felt like I served on a couple of the environmental committees, one of the appropriations and one of the policy committees, and we actually did a bill which started to address some of the water damage that we've had here in the state. We've had green algae and all these horrible problems in our waterways, so we are starting to try and look at ways that we can make sure that damage is mitigated, including agricultural runoff, septic tanks. So I'm really happy that we're finally addressing that. I served in the legislature for 8 years where we weren't allowed to say the words climate change. So it's nice that we have bills that we are finally making a difference on those issues. We have a representative from Miami, Senator Rodriguez, and he made sure that we got a bill in that said if you put a new development project on the coastal zone and there's any state money involved, that it has to meet certain requirements before it's even built. So there were some good environmental steps taken this year. Unfortunately, like Rep. Escamani said, our domestic abusers bill didn't get heard, and unfortunately none of the bills that are common sense for gun control have been heard, but we always continue to advocate for them. I'm still trying. Also, I was one of the original sponsors of the police risk protection orders, which allow the police to remove a gun from somebody who is a danger to themselves or to others. I'd like to see that expanded so that a family member could also go to court and petition that their family member should not have a gun. And that's for both suicide and for causing harm to other people. So those are some of the really big issues that we discussed. Some of them, we're making some steps on. Everything in the Florida legislature is baby steps, but some of them we're not getting as far as I'd like to get on.
Sure. And Representative Schlossberg, I want you to answer, and then I want to get to this question because it deals with women, and because we have a lot of women on, I know they want to hear this answer. Thank you.
Got you. One of our women's caucus bills that Senator Berman, Rep. Escamani, and I were very passionate about passed this session, which was Donna's Law, removing the statute of limitations for sexual battery on a minor. And let me tell you something. I had a roommate. We were in our 30s, and at night she would cry out saying, "Stop, stop." And she was just replaying assault on her when she was a child. And she never really got justice because there was a reporting requirement within 72 hours. You had to report it, and there was family issues. And so now, this was a huge deal for the state of Florida. This is a huge deal for victims of sexual battery. And so this was definitely one of our main priorities in the Women's Caucus that got passed. And we were very thankful that we got this legislation passed, and there's more work to be done, which we will go back next session to do. Another bill that I sponsored was the increasing the fines for those drivers who overtake school buses, and when the children are getting off the bus, who are it's just incredibly dangerous. This is something that has been going on statewide. There's been many caught on camera, like different law enforcement agencies who've caught on camera these cars just going right when the kids are getting on the side where kids are getting off the bus, just overtaking the school bus. And so by increasing the fine, we're basically sending a message that we're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior where vulnerable kids are crossing the street. So I think that was an important step to show that we're serious about traffic safety.
Wonderful. So ladies, and whomever would like to answer this, feel free. How can we improve? This is one of our questions from our chat. How can we improve the issues with access to care, especially in territories where women are living 200% below the poverty line? I'll ask again, how can we improve the issues with access to care, especially in territories where women are living 200% below the poverty line? Who'd like to answer that one first? Senator Berman, okay.
Sure, but when you're talking about access to care, I assume you're meaning health care. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm assuming they may be meaning health care.
Or is it, I guess you could be talking about daycare also, which could be something along those lines. But for access to care, in the state, we need to expand Medicaid, like I said. Once we expand Medicaid, many more people, but if you're living 200% below the poverty line, you should be eligible for Medicaid at this point. We do have very strict requirements in this state, but hopefully, somebody would be eligible to get access to care. In terms of daycare, we're having few noises here in my house. We'll take care of those. But so I'm gonna pass this on to another rep and let them talk about it.
Sure. Well, so Senator Berman already mentioned Medicaid expansion. I do think expanding the poverty thresholds, so more folks can qualify for Medicaid expansion is super important for those that live below the poverty line. We have to remember too that the poverty line is already, I mean, just thinking about our workers on the minimum wage right now. I mean, you're only making about $17,000 a year. You can't survive off that. And for those that are below that, I mean, the ability to have a roof over your head is incredibly limited. And I already talked about a little bit of how, folks who are precariously housed, who live in hotels and motels, they can't afford a rent, they can't put the down payment for an apartment. Some live in their cars. And so I think it's really important that we strengthen our safety nets. Now, every person's going to say, well, that costs money, that costs money, how do you pay for it? And I already mentioned earlier that I think there are so many expenses the state has that are ridiculous. I mean, in particular, corporate giveaways being one of them. I mean, Florida is a separate reporting state, which means that we allow corporations to basically hide their income. So a company like MasterCard, for example, MasterCard says they don't make money in Florida because their headquarters are in a different state. Now, we all know that if you have a MasterCard in your wallet, every time you swipe it, they're making money, but they're able to say, actually, we don't, because we don't have a physical, tangible property here, so we don't make money here. And so many companies do that. So I always stress to folks, like, we got to close these loopholes, make sure corporations, all of us pay taxes. Why can't they pay their taxes? Because that can help us pay for some of these deep needs. I think that it's shameful that in this state, you can't access Medicaid unless you're pregnant. And then when you give birth, you're going to lose your health insurance through Medicaid. Your child will have kid care, but you won't have anything. And so I think it's essential that healthcare be a right to every Floridian. And we can talk about the ways to do that. But I do think Medicaid expansion and ensuring that we expand the eligibility requirements and the coverage would be an easy step in the right direction. And then again, we talked about the affordable housing. I'm a big supporter of transitional housing. And the reality too is that for many folks that are living in poverty and below the poverty level, they need wraparound support, right? It's not just, here's a check and good luck. I mean, folks typically need support of a caseworker. There's going to be many layers of experiences and even trauma to address. And so we do need more social workers. There's been a lot of conversations around, police budgets and the criminalization of poverty. Many folks who live in poverty have criminal backgrounds, which also prohibit their ability from getting a job. So we got to ban the box so that we're not looking at small criminal acts that are nonviolent to prohibit a job being found. And of course, when you look at reimagining public safety and considering investments in more direct service work that can be an intervention versus incarceration. And we didn't mention this in the policy review, but I did put it in the chat just to elevate, these past two sessions, we've seen a lot of great work led by people of color around criminal justice, systematic changes. And in particular, I have filed a bill to set a statutory limitation on the arrest of minors, trying to end the school to prison pipeline. But we've also seen amazing advocates like Rep. Amy Mercado, Representative Chevron Jones, now Senator-elect Chevron Jones, in pushing forward issues for incarcerated women to require that there be pads and tampons within all our prisons, and most recently to try to end shackles around pregnancy in prisons. And I mention that because I think that it ties into this effort to destigmatize folks that have a criminal background, because many folks who live in poverty live next to crime or have witnessed crime or experienced crime, and they're also potentially victims. And I think it's really important that we provide them with access to social services, mental health, to give them the opportunity to be successful versus a constant cycle of being trapped.
Sure. I think we have time for maybe one more question. And then I have a final question. I know you have some statements. We want to talk about what does the 2021 legislative session look like. But before we go there, we have a question from Facebook. It reads, President Trump is supporting an initiative called Operation Warp Speed to rush a COVID-19 vaccine to market. If a COVID-19 vaccine becomes available, will you support vaccine mandates, even though there will be no long-term safety data to support it? And even though it will be given to the general population, but only tested on the healthiest clinical trial volunteers. Who'd like to jump in and answer that question?
I'm happy to real quick. I mean, I think that it's an important question. If there is a vaccine, I think it's really important to prioritize those that are healthcare workers and those that are direct line before even considering mass production across the country. But I also really do empathize with some of the concerns around, mandating vaccines, and I think we need to prioritize the frontline folks that need it the most, who are in the hospital setting. Many vaccines, like the flu vaccine, are not mandated, and there's reasons for that. So I do think we need more data before moving too fast. The last thing we need is a backlash. But I also understand the urgency to get a vaccine, because much of the conversation for, I think, majority of Americans is that we can't get back to normal without a vaccine. So I think the warp speed effort is important, but I also empathize with the need for more data. And I think we need to prioritize frontline staff to get a vaccine first. And this is purely an assumption, but I'm sure many frontline staffers want a vaccine. And so, we gotta meet the needs of those that are most at risk right now. And if they feel comfortable with it, then that should be available to them.
Anyone else? No? Okay. My final question, we don't have any more in the chat that I saw. So what do you think, Senator Berman, what do you think, and I want everyone to answer this, what do you think we should expect from the 2021 legislative session? And Senator Berman, once you answer that, you can kind of go into your final statements before Takeda and Jennifer come back.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for doing this panel. It's really been very informative, a lot of really good issues that we're discussing. And we do need to talk a little bit about, so for the next session, we've already talked about finances are going to be front and center. There's no question. The budget is going to be number one. And traditionally, the Republican legislature has tried to limit the number of bills that pass each year. And I'm sure that will continue. So really the big substantive issue is going to be the budget. Interestingly, there is an amendment on the ballot this year to raise the minimum wage in Florida. I urge all of you to support it, and I think that will be part of the discussion if that does pass. It would be great to raise, it's a graduated raise of the minimum wage, and we should all be supporting that. And I think that could be something that will be in the legislature. There was some chat discussion about women's issues a little bit. So every year we have worked on equal pay for equal work. It's very sad that we continue to have to even have this discussion. And also Florida is one of the states that never ratified the ERA. Now they have gotten the minimum number to ratify it. So now it's back to a decision in Washington, what's going to happen since all the states have ratified it. But equal pay for equal work kind of ties into that. Florida actually has a lower difference between men and women than many states, and that's only because we have so many minimum wage earners. It's not a good thing that we have a smaller difference between men and women. It just means that we have so many people who are paid a very low salary here in our state. But we do, and it certainly affects communities of color much more adversely, and we need to really continue to push for equal pay for equal work in the legislature. I do think there will be some discussion about racial injustice. We've seen a lot of things happen as a result of George Floyd. I do, as Vice Mayor knows, we've talked a lot. I am going to be looking at, like last year, we did some changes to the Holocaust education in the state. And I think this year we need to focus on changing our African-American history component in our schools, and I do think that will be something that will be seriously discussed, as well as a lot of criminal justice reform, because it does adversely affect Black and Brown communities very much. We do have our CARES dollars, which is helping with some of the COVID things, but we'll see how that all plays out in the end. I want you to know that I am going to be working on trying to change that education component to include a much more comprehensive African American studies. And I also have on a happy note, so I'd like to conclude on a good note. A lot of times when we do women's bills, we can get support. This past session, there was a bill because a woman gave birth in jail with no one there. No one checked on her. She gave birth by herself. She was there for 8 hours alone. And thankfully it worked, you know, she was okay and the child was okay. But so we did pass a bill this year saying that pregnant women, you know, have to be checked on while they're in prison. I have a bill which I feel pretty optimistic about. You know, so sometimes we can't do the major issues, but we can do things along the edges and it helps. And I'm working with the Guardian ad litems and the Florida Association of Women Lawyers, and it's to have a lactation room in every courthouse so that we can have women who are attorneys or even people who are members of the jury or members of the staff or judges or anyone who is a mother, so that they can continue to work but be able to breastfeed their children. And I feel really positive, like a bill like that, we should be able to get through the Florida legislature. And that's the kind of bill that we as the Women Caucus can all rally around. It's very nonpartisan. So hopefully that'll be something that we get through. You know that I will continue to fight for all the issues that affect us as women, that, you know, I'm a strong advocate for bringing money back to Palm Beach County. It's great. We have Rep. Escamani on, so she gets to hear about a lot of our Palm Beach County issues here today. But I'm going to continue to fight for all of you to be your voice in Tallahassee. But we need you to support us. We need you to be there, to be writing letters, to be making phone calls. If you want to come to Tallahassee, we love it. Come up and visit us when we're in session. Hopefully we'll be in session. You know, we don't know what the future holds with COVID, but we're scheduled to start in March. And hopefully by then we'll be able to be meeting in person, but we will see how it all unfolds. But please support us and be there for us, and we will be there to fight for you. Thank you.
Sure. Representative Schlossberg.
Hi, sorry, my dog just barked. I'm sorry.
What should we expect in 2020? You want me to let Representative? Okay.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so I agree with everything Senator Berman just said. I think a few more, just to add a few more things, we're going to probably be looking at reform when it comes to unemployment assistance, expanding the time frame, increasing the amount of dollars paid. We're probably also, and I think something that we're going to necessarily have to look at would be funding for universities for research and health-related issues, possibly COVID testing and other type of disease research. I think we're going to have to start focusing on health issues, and including bringing that to the universities to help with. One other issue that affects the Jewish community that we haven't really discussed, and is not COVID related, I'm going to be working on with some other legislators. We're going to be working on changing some of the university student government statutes, which we've had an issue at Florida State University recently with an unelected Senate president. He was never elected by any of his peers, but somehow he managed to become the Senate president. So we're going to look at ways that we can make sure that at least we're putting an elected student body Senate president in that position, and other types of fixes. These are things that I think are important to the Jewish community. And for my close, what I want to say is it's been a complete honor to have my colleagues, Senator Berman and Rep. Escamani here. We work wonderfully as a caucus, our Women's Caucus and our Democratic Caucus. We really do. All of these issues we work together on, and it's been such an honor working and serving with both of you. And I'm looking forward to all the good that we're going to do next session.
I think you might be on mute, Vice Mayor.
I was saying we just have a few more minutes before we turn it back over to these ladies. What can we expect in 2021? Let me see. Can you do it in 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'll do it in less. I'll do it in less. I mean, my colleagues already covered some really important issues, and the one thing I'll add to is just, we will always look at every policy issue from multiple lenses, including a gender lens, so that we make sure that bills that we're passing or trying to stop from passing, that we understand their impact on women and girls. And I know for all three of us, you can always count on us to do that. And that's why it's so important to have women in politics. There's literally one committee that I served on where there were only 2 women in a space of 15 members. I mean, it's we still have a long way to go in electing more women. And with that said, folks can keep in touch with all of us. I know we're each on social media. You can email our offices. If anything comes up pandemic related, don't be shy to reach out, or policy idea as well. And you can follow me at Anna for Florida on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's annaforflorida.com if you need to contact me more directly.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to facilitate this conversation. I'm getting ready to turn it back over to Jennifer and Takeda Pang. Thank you, Jennifer and Takeda. I enjoyed each of you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you again to our wonderful moderator and to our panelists. That was very informative. I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. Again, if you're interested in learning more about JWF, you can visit our website at jwfpalmbeach.org. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Women's Foundation for partnering with us. Have a good night, everybody.
Good evening. Thank you.